Well, Tim was talking about thunder being stolen this morning, and I feel that some of mine's been stolen actually. When someone as wise and as non-judgmental and as open as Wendy starts talking about taking up swords, then we've really got to take it seriously, I think. I'm a great believer in spontaneity, and I don't use PowerPoint except when I have to in certain university situations, but if I have the choice, I don't use it. So I apologise for those of you who think PowerPoint is great. And I've been challenged by only finding out recently that I can't show the OpenEye film, which we made in early 2008, which I wanted to show, and I only made a kind of late decision on that. And I think probably I made that decision because of what has just been referred to, what's happening at the moment. And that film is, I think, if anything, even more relevant today than it was when it was made in 2008. Not least because when a statutory framework gets into toxic hands, it is a catastrophe. And I am really concerned that the current thinking that we're seeing from the Department of Education at the moment put that with the powers they have through a statutory framework. If that isn't a toxic combination, I don't know what is. And I do want to say immediately, this is not party political. The OpenEye campaign was never party political. We were witheringly critical of the then Labour government, as many of you here will know. And so if it feels that, and there will no doubt be some people in the audience today who support the current government, this isn't a government sort of bashing exercise. This is all about what's actually happening and whether it's helpful for young children or not. It's not. Certainly, speaking personally, I'm not taking the opportunity to bash the Conservatives. I'm not. This isn't what this is about. The level that we need to discuss this needs to go beyond that. I did also just want to refer to the speakers that we had just before lunch, who gave that fantastic talk and started out by saying that we're not experts. I want to say you are brilliant experts at what you're actually doing, and you're just as expert as any other expert here today. So I really want to say that. I also wanted to say that I'm very privileged to be sandwiched between Wendy and Sami Tamimi and Sally over there, Sally Goddard Blythe, all of whose work I've got enormous respect for. So to be speaking in the same wedge of this conference with them is just a huge privilege for me. I just wanted to say that. So I'm going to be improvising a bit in what I say, because I had about 15 minutes to when I was going to talk. I've now got more like 25. And to give some historical context to this document, which many of you, I think, well, I know many of you will know of, called Unhurried Pathways, which is an early years framework. And I think what Wendy said, that kind of getting the right language to describe this kind of document is very, very difficult, and whether it's a curriculum in all but name can be open to debate. And I can assure you that we exchanged probably kind of hundreds of emails, the group who produced this, trying to decide what to call it. Language is kind of very difficult, and I think we just have to kind of accept that. But to put this in some historical context, in the summer of 2007, I was sitting on a train going to Stroud, and and it was related to kind of Margaret, who's in the front here in some way, and I was remembering the campaign that Margaret was involved in around about 2000, and that's when we first had contact, and that campaign you were involved in, and it just gave me the idea that actually that we need a campaign that challenges those aspects of, and I'm choosing my language very carefully, I always do, those aspects of the early years foundation stage which were problematic, and those of us who were in that campaign still believe that the fundamental problems that were there at the start are actually still there. And it was from that thought then that got together with Margaret and Sue Palmer and Kim and Lynn Oldfield. There was a group of 5 or 6 of us, and that was where the Open Eye campaign started in late 2007. And again, I'm assuming that many people here will know about the kind of work that we were doing over that period of 4 or so years, where we had some modest successes, but I'm afraid they were very, very modest and not nearly as extensive as we would have liked. But I do think that what that campaign did was it raised consciousness in the sector. If only it got people to take up positions of kind of disagreeing with us, at least it got people to think. And so just on that kind of level alone, I think the kind of campaign that myself and my colleagues have been involved in are really, really, really important, whether or not they get to the heart of the kind of policy making process. And I was going to show the film that we made in early 2008. If I'm sure many people here know that film, but if anyone hasn't seen it, do please go to the Open Eye website and click on films or media or whatever, and then you can see the film, you see it online, and it's just a kind of 10-minute film. And I think the reason I was going to show it was precisely because of what's been happening in the last few weeks, which I think dramatically brings home the kind of challenges that we have in the early years. And indeed, that question from the audience was a brilliant question. That you know, if you were an early years teacher today, what would you do? Really, that's the kind of bottom line. And I'm going to say a little bit about that, which might be a bit controversial later on. Not that controversial. I know this is going to sound a bit like a cracked record, but I'm going to say it again because I don't think it can be said often enough. And this is Caroline Sharp, 2002, who wrote, "Rather than making sure that the child is ready for school, wouldn't it be better to make school ready for children?" I think I've read hundreds of thousands of words of literature in the early years field, and I don't think I've ever come across anything put so pithily and so succinctly that gets right to the heart of the problem. And also to challenge the latest views about France, let's get a kind of different view from France. Let's go to Jean-Jacques Rousseau, writing in 1762, who said, "Childhood has its way of seeing, thinking and feeling which are proper to it. Nothing is less sensible than to want to substitute ours for theirs." So, you know, when we talk about France, let's get some balance in the conversation. There are many, many different viewpoints coming out of France, and I think that one, written 350 years ago, in a sense is touching on something really fundamental that I think we all here could relate to. I was going to talk about toxic childhood, but that would steal Sue's thunder, and I'm sure it's something that we'll be returning to this weekend. I was also going to, this awful word, schoolification. I'm not sure whether the word or the process is actually worse, but I think it's very much at the centre of the concerns that the Open Eye campaign had, which then the Early Childhood Action Group have, and it's something about that, the argument that when politics and technology and the economy trump children's well-being, then something has gone fundamentally wrong. And I think that's for me, that's a kind of fundamental principle that is driving what we're concerned about. In fact, for those of you who read The Guardian, in yesterday's Guardian, there was some really good letters, and the heading was "Children Need Fresh Air and Play." And the first one was from a very well-known child psychotherapist called Margaret Cohen, who, I'll just quote a bit from her letter. She says, "Michael Gove treats children as machines that can be made to do more work to keep up with East Asia. To support his plans, he gives two arguments. One that would improve the children's, in quotes, performance. The second, that they would help working parents and be family friendly. Both arguments are about the economy's needs and not about children's welfare." And she goes on and she finishes off her letter saying, "We are in unsafe hands." So I think when such senior figures as Margaret there and Wendy earlier are expressing such grave concerns, as I said earlier, I think we have to listen and we have to take notice. One manifestation of the schoolification process is the whole, what I've recently called the scandal of summer-born children. And I just want to say that there is a new campaign that has recently been launched, and one of its prime movers, Pauline Hull. Could you put your hand up, please, Pauline? Where there's waving her hand there in the middle of the back. Pauline is part of a new campaign to really try to get the law changed such that summer-born children, which obviously constitutes about 1/12 of the population, or probably even more than that. No, more than that actually, aren't inconvenienced substantially, such that their whole kind of life chances might be compromised because of the very rigid school starting practices that we actually have in this country. And she's got a leaflet which is out on the information table. So for those of you who are interested in that whole issue, please do support the campaign. Talk to Pauline, because I think that one of the ways of challenging what's happening is to challenge it on many fronts, to have as many fronts as we possibly can, challenging what's actually happening in this whole field. And then I think it becomes more likely that the zeitgeist, someone used the word zeitgeist this morning, that we can shift the zeitgeist, because I do think that it's through kind of bottom-up pressure that we've got the best chance of really shifting and changing towards values and practices which we all in this room would support. I don't think that top-down change works. I think there's something fundamental about the kind of political process that just makes that very, very difficult, if not impossible. But when I was involved in another campaign several years ago, and we met a shadow minister. What she said in a private conversation was, she said, the one thing that makes a big difference to the political process is members of Parliament receiving letters in their mailbags. She said that really does make a difference, and it gets members of Parliament to kind of be aware of issues and to even take them up with their own ministers, etc. So there's something about this kind of bottom-up empowerment that I think is really, really important. Early Childhood Action produced this document called Unhurried Pathways. This was launched at a conference in Winchester last October. And just a little story about that. To a very successful conference with 220 people, with a keynote from Susan Greenfield, who's also contributing to this conference. And about 3 or 4 weeks after the conference, at the Winchester University graduation ceremony, the Vice-Chancellor, who, as you all know, is the most important person in any university, gave her speech to 500 people at Winchester Cathedral, and she referred to this conference and the huge success that it was, and she leant forward like this and she said, "And revolution was in the air," she said. And for those of you who were there, you'll probably know what it means. And she said that as a compliment. She said it as a compliment. And I know there's a big issue about revolution versus reform, and as Wendy was saying earlier, always being open to having conversations. But I absolutely agree with every word that Wendy said, that there comes a point where one has to take a stand. And I think the events of recent days show that this is something that we really do now have to do. This week I've written a couple of pieces, and I've coined a new term, which is the Tescoization of the early years. And there's on the Nursery World website, there's an article. There's also one coming out in Teach Nursery magazine. And last night, I got an email from a very prominent early years professor whose name will remain confidential. And he said that he was delighted to see my article, and he said that the early years sector in this country is now in such crisis because of the attacks that are being made on it, that the whole sector has to take a stand and say no. In terms of Nordic, sorry, this is my own Nordic bit. I've just been in Iceland for the last week, visiting nurseries, play schools. That's the word that they use over there. And someone that we spoke to there said that that if in their country a government tried to legislate in the early years in the way that our government has in this country, that practitioners would simply say, no, we're not doing it. And this is something that I've kind of coined a phrase for. It's called principled non-compliance, and I've written articles about this, drawing on Winnicott's work, particularly because those of you who know Winnicott will know he was a great theorist of compliance and how damaging compliance is, and when children have to comply to the environment rather than being left free. So there's a whole question about what happens when a professional is asked, or rather is told, that they must do things with their children that they know will harm those children. And I'm saying that if early years work is a profession, then if in the professions generally there is a principle that professionals will not harm their clients. That's a basic fundamental principle. And so I would hope that there are going to be practitioners who are able and have the courage to actually take that stance, and then if this got into the courts, I would really be fascinated to see what the independent judiciary would make of a government who is saying that practitioners must do things with young children that those practitioners themselves know are going to be harmful. I'm going to finish off with a quotation from Rudolf Steiner, because some of you might know I'm a trained Steiner kindergarten teacher, and in 1919 Steiner said, the state will tell us how to teach and what results to aim for, and what the state prescribes will be bad. Its targets are the worst ones imaginable, yet it expects to get the best possible results. Today's politics work in the direction of regimentation, and it will go even further than this in its attempts to make people conform. Human beings will be treated like puppets on strings, and this will be treated as progress in the extreme. Institutions like schools will be organised in the most arrogant and unsuitable manner. This is Steiner talking 94 years ago. And finally he said, and I'll stop after this, he said, it is inappropriate to work towards standardising human souls through future educational methods. Thank you.